You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas. I'm Fatima, CEO at Agile Management Office, Mental Health Ambassador, and your host. This podcast is made possible thanks to Agile Management Office. We help businesses in three key ways: improving organizational culture and delivery, supporting transformation and change, and streamlining governance and process using 20 years of proven practice and the AMO Way model. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about how waking up at 5 a.m. has changed my life. Now, it may be something that sounds a bit ridiculous, especially if you're one of those early birds that like to get up early, and you may be thinking, what's wrong with this person? How come she doesn't get up early? And so forth. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit more about why I didn't do it, about how I forced the situation so I can get outside my comfort zone and actually wake up early. And then I'm going to talk you through some of the benefits as a result of waking up early and some tips for you to help you if you are like me and were unable to wake up as early as 5 a.m. Now, I know there is some people out there that are waking up earlier than that, but 5 a.m. is quite good for someone like me who usually gets up several hours after that. I know that we've probably heard it all before, and we have read a lot of books about how successful people start their day. You might have heard about some ridiculous morning routines like those of Tim Ferriss, Barack Obama, and even Oprah. Some super successful people swear by getting up early. In fact, many of them do. It's really rare for me to hear in a book or listening to a podcast or watching a successful person talk about their life and for them to say that they sleep in. It's very rare. Now, for me personally, I didn't really think it was necessary for me to get up early. I was quite content of working longer days instead. So I might start my day at 9 and then finish probably 6 or 7 o'clock. Particularly when running a business, the days were much longer. I personally didn't think there was a need. I assumed that by starting late and finishing late, I did the same amount of hours had I started early, and that I would effectively have the same outcomes or just as good of a result. Now, I didn't know any better, but now that I've joined the early bird club, I know that I was wrong, and I wish I actually had done this sooner. Now, let me tell you how this sort of situation played out. First of all, I am married to a tradesperson. So my husband is a carpenter. And so he's usually up easily by about 5 a.m. most days. In fact, he's sometimes even earlier, depending on what location he's working for. But for me, I continued to sleep, and he would always make jokes about how comfortable and cozy I looked asleep for another couple of hours while he was out already working almost at morning tea break by the time I'd woken up. So I continued to sleep. I then found myself rushing in the mornings. I probably wasn't aware of it at the time because when you're so used to doing something, sometimes you don't realize there's actually anything wrong with that behavior. But I felt myself rushing in the morning most days. I will probably be in the hustle and bustle of morning peak hour traffic. I would be getting, pings and requests via WhatsApp or Teams or phone calls or text messages from people, whether it's my team or clients or something else. These are all things that were happening because I was starting later, and those people probably were starting late as well. For me, I felt that the idea of actually starting early seemed unrealistic. One, because it was too comfortable to change a habit that had been the same for so many decades. I also thought, why would I wake up early if I'm able to do the same amount of hours that I would do by starting later? I thought, what's the discomfort benefits? What are they going to be for me to put myself in a position where I actually go out of my way to wake up early. But I thought it's time for an experiment. And I decided that I was going to do it. And I decided that I was going to do it because even though I work for myself and I can start whenever I want, which makes it even more difficult to try to get up early, not only do I like a good sleep in and sometimes staying up late, but I was so comfortable in my comfort zone and I have my own car. Though, moving on, my husband, who currently is driving a V8U, which drinks a lot of petrol, plus it's a car that hasn't done too many kilometers for its age, he started to think about wanting to minimize driving it and asked to borrow my car one day. He's been telling me to wake up early for a really long time, and I've had a lot of ups and downs in business. And he always says to me, if you wake up early, you'll get more done. You'll be more successful if you wake up early. He'd say I'd be better off for it. And he'd always complain about the fact that I was always sleeping in and he didn't understand why I couldn't just get up the same time he did, particularly because he had an alarm that I usually slept through, but he could easily wake me. So anyways, he wanted to reduce the use of the vehicle, and doing so meant that I lent him my car one day on the basis that I would go with him to work the next day. I agreed to go with him for a trial for one day, and it saved me catching an Uber or catching public transport, etc., etc. I thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? If I didn't enjoy it, I would tell him to drive his own car or go and look for a new van or something else. But we gave it a shot. Now, it's almost been close to a year since I decided to enable him to borrow my car. And what that meant is every time almost that I've needed to travel into the CBD for work, I would go with him these days. What happened after that first day was amazing. In fact, in one day, by starting my morning around 6 or 6:30, by the time we actually reached the office, I had a solid 2 to 3 hours of focused work. Focused work in a quiet office that almost looked deserted. And for the first time in 6 years of running my business, I didn't feel the need, and I did not have to log on again after hours when I finished the day, similar time to my husband, around 3:30. There were some odd occasions where I might have had to take some international calls and things like that. But for the most part, I felt comfortable and my team got used to me finishing at 3:30. And by starting early and having that 2 to 3 hours of focused work uninterrupted, it meant that I saved myself 2 to 3 hours later in the day. I was able to start my walk for fitness purposes and got fitter. I ate dinner earlier and didn't sleep on a heavy stomach. I had more time to read, and I've caught up on a lot of books that I've had on my to-do list. I saved money in paying for parking every day and paying for road tolls for both of us. Dinner was no longer rushed or takeaway a few nights a week. Overall, I was seeing some really big benefits, including being able to divert most of my attention outside of my deep focused time to helping my team with their work and other client needs. So this meant that they had more of my attention, and we were able to bring on 3 new interns and increase the number of products we were creating for the market. Now, the benefits that I saw were after one day. And for me, looking at the facts, it made absolute sense to keep doing that. And so I've been doing that ever since. And it's been absolutely amazing, to say the least, to have that experience of waking up early and seeing what a difference it makes. So if you're not an early bird, and it does take time to get into the groove, and it's not going to be easy, but after about 28 days, they say you form a habit. So overall for me, I can't imagine going back to late starts and late finishes ever again. And I hope that if you're listening and you were like me, that you are also open to the idea of trying something like this. Now, everyone's circumstances are different. So depending on how many other responsibilities you might have. It may be harder or easier depending on what time you can start. But I know that even some of the busiest people are able to wake up early and get a lot more done. And I definitely am one of them now. So I want to share with you a few tips to help you get your morning groove on. First of all, if you're anything like me, I'm very competitive. So I made it a bit of a challenge for myself. And I said to myself that if I can get over the struggle and of it being hard to do, for example, after 1 week, perhaps reward yourself with a massage or something else you've been wanting to get. Calculate how much money you're going to save as a result of possible carpooling if you have someone you can travel with, or even having extra time to park further away from the office and get your fitness steps in, or perhaps you are saving time in traffic. Be okay with being uncomfortable. This is where we learn the most. Many times in my life and career, I've had anxiety up the wazoo for different situations. And I know that being uncomfortable actually is where I stretch my abilities and my risk factors and my knowledge, and it makes me a better person for it. So being okay with being uncomfortable, it's where we learn the most. Have a consistent morning ritual to increase your productivity in those early hours. So for example, in addition to waking up, getting ready for the day, putting on my outfit, which I usually pick the night before, and then grabbing a coffee in the morning with my husband on the way to work, I then also make a cup of tea, catch up on some emails, and then I get straight into deep focus work on the specific number of deliverables before then getting some fresh air mid-morning. Plan the day before for what you aim to achieve that morning. So if you are aware and clear the night before what you plan to achieve that morning, your 2 to 3 hours of deep focused work will be absolutely productive because you know what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. And then clear your head before the busyness starts, and know that when sort of the daylight comes and the office is no longer bare and there's more people around you, that you are already several steps ahead of most people that decided to sleep in that day. So there you have it. They are some of my tips to help you to improve the productivity for you in the day-to-day. I thought I would share this with you because for me, this early morning start has really changed my life for the better in so many different ways. And I hope that it does also for you. Now, just before I go, a really quick small favor to ask. If you could please share this podcast or any episode that you've enjoyed, or rate this podcast. It's a great motivator. As I said, I'm very competitive to keep bringing these to you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile Ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?